first off, I'm sorry about the demotion. I'm sorry Coulson is demoted. I'm sure he probably viewed it a little bit as a temporary gig, being director. But do you think he deserved it?
If he was going to give the magic cube of info and destiny back to anybody, I think he was hoping it would be a very majestic, one-eyed black man, Nick Fury. So the fact that that's not who it is, I think, may not be something that's sitting so well with him. I think anyone who saw Civil War knows that the Sokovia Accords are in place. People with powers are being registered. On our show, that means Inhumans. And so the government has to bring S.H.I.E.L.D. out of the shadows and make it a legitimate organization again. But that means there are government bosses who want their people running the thing. And so he's once again a field agent whose first name is Agent. And if that's what it takes to get me partnered up with the incredible Henry Simmons, I'll take it any day of the week.
That's right. I do like seeing that sort of buddy cop dynamic of Coulson and Mac just riding around in the jet. But we do have the new director, mysterious new director, played by Jason O'Mara. And, well, do you think that there's going to be room for Coulson to kind of butt heads a little bit and say, you know what, man, like, I saved the world from this hive thing. I helped, put down Hydra. Maybe just back off a little bit.
I'm glad you said that, frankly. I don't feel like Coulson gets enough credit for, rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. out of a couple of shoeboxes and like a rubber band shooter back to being something that could actually take down Hive and Hydra. But I think that's the nature of being a Marvel Universe super spy, is nobody knows the cool stuff you did, which is, it's kind of a bummer when you do cool stuff, but I guess it's probably not so bad, when you're being brought back from the dead using alien means. That probably makes you a tough swipe on Tinder. I'm thinking, like, hi, I like walks in the park and I'm back from the dead. Okay, that was silly. I'm sorry.
You can't help but feel bad for him as far as, like, nobody knows that he's alive. Although, I kind of wonder, do the Avengers secretly know that Coulson is alive and they just don't want to invite him to parties or whatever? Like, Coulson's dead, we can't invite him.
Wouldn't that be mean?
That would be so mean.
I like to think Phil is a hit at parties, with his various trivia about the old days of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, I don't know. I suspect at some point that knowledge is going to have to get out. Coulson has some splaining to do. And I think he'd like to do that. I hope that will be a scene someday, maybe an after-credits one-shot or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of us would like to see that as well. This season, since you have dealt with we've had the very spy-fi kind of seasons. We've had the Inhumans and the alien threats or Inhuman threat. Now we're kind of branching out into sort of a more mystical, magical, somewhat supernatural arc.
You could even call it strange.
You could call it strange.
Interesting. All I know is we started to see the beginning of that world with the introduction of Scarlet Witch. And so now some of that stuff on our show, the Ghost Rider represents some of that magical stuff. He's certainly not what we normally consider an Inhuman. He's a different kind of being. It gets into some of that magic stuff. So the question for our show is, as it is every year, how do we take something like that and make it work in the science nerd world of our show? So Fitzsimmons and Mac, to a certain extent, they will be sciencing that up and trying to figure out how demonic Flaming Skull, Ghost Rider, and various things of that world are based in something that's like science.
Mm-hmm. Do you personally like the fact that you can kind of play in this magical world a little bit now?
I do. It's... it's cool. I love the Ghost Rider has been a movie a couple of times, the more classic Johnny Blaze version with the flaming Harley. I like that they chose this really cool run from the comics with Robbie Reyes, a tough kid from East Los Angeles who's got a Hell Charger, a muscle car that may have lowrider capabilities. I don't know. I'm not spoiling. I just think that would be cool. Maybe we could use that song. Just because it feels more like the really diverse younger world of our show and some of his agents. So, I mean, the guy's trouble coming out of the gate. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's taking everybody out for vengeance. And so that makes him on our enemies list, at least right out of the gate.
Well, thematically, it feels like the end of season 3 sort of wrapped up a lot of storylines that had been going on for a while. Is this sort of a clean slate as far as the S.H.I.E.L.D. team? Are they kind of going off in a whole new direction?
You know, it's a good question. Certainly, some of the stuff, Grant Ward, Hive, that element of the Inhumans, the kind of original gangsters of Inhumans in Hive, that became a big thing. It's certainly 3 seasons of incredible bad guy performance from Brett Dalton and Hydra. I think that stuff is taking a back seat at the moment. But the thing about our show is what we established at the end of last year was new director, S.H.I.E.L.D. controlled by other people, Ghost Rider being introduced, and also this wacky mad scientist who's in all this, into the kind of transhumanism and body modifications, Radcliffe. Mm-hmm. He built an LMD, which to fans of the comics, that's an AI, that's Ex Machina. That's a very, very interesting doorway to open in the Marvel world. For a lot of, when Coulson was initially killed off, most people thought that reveal would be an LMD. So it's interesting to see where that's going to go. So our amazing writers, Jed and Mo Whedon, Jeff Bell, all the great writers, they usually introduce 3 big themes or obstacles coming out of the gate. Daisy on the Run's another one. And then as we go, we find 2 more huge ones that I didn't see coming. So I'll get a weird text, and all of a sudden I'll be sitting in a nervous room, and I'll find out, oh, listen, we're going to go see a movie, and S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist with season 2. So we'll see what's coming.
Well, yeah, that tease for the LMD at the end of last season really was something that I think drove everybody, fans, myself included, a little bit crazy, because it was like, oh my God, it's happening. Within the world of LMDs and then Ghost Rider and everything, is Coulson the kind of guy that, because he's seen it all, because he has died and he's come back, he's dealt with Norse gods and humans, is anything really throw him anymore, or is it just like, oh, really? Okay, so now we got a guy with a flaming skull? Like,
you know, it's I really got to, every time, he's like, the guy was like a chain letter. First he was this one guy named Agent in Iron Man, and then he seemed just like a kind of annoying bureaucrat trying to get a meeting with Robert Downey, and then gradually they're like, oh no, you're Nick Fury's right-hand man, and I kept finding out more and more stuff. And then in Thor, he kind of sees this giant destroyer monster, and he's like, oh God, look at this guy. You know, and I was like, what has this guy seen? And I do think that when he came back, when he was resurrected in agony using alien inhuman technology, I think he thought, well, how are they going to shock me now? Mm-hmm. And, you know, and then he had Hive turning into particles. And now he's got the guy with the flaming skull and the invincible flaming Dodge Charger. I think he's shockable. They keep coming up with stuff to shock him.
Yeah. Well, since this character of Ghost Rider is this spirit of vengeance, Coulson definitely had a dark moment last season where, you know, he killed Grant Ward, and he really did help create a vessel for Hive. You know, he did some bad stuff. Is that the kind of thing that should scare Coulson at all? That this guy that's a spirit of vengeance out there, might Coulson end up in his cross?
Wow, Aaron, I hadn't thought of that. I might be on the Ghost Rider's radar. Yeah, I mean, he certainly, if somebody was going to be out for kind of justice, revenge, they could certainly come after Coulson because he did extinguish the life of Grant Ward. On the other hand, and maybe I've been playing this guy too long, I was like, I've watched him kill and maim probably 15 or 20 people that I care about and am responsible for over those years, and I felt guilty that I hadn't done it before then.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not just because I'm so crazy about Constance Zimmer, and to see her bleeding out during a damn dinner date over burgers.
That was a bummer.
I felt like he kind of earned his permanent nap with that one.
Well, we also have had this long-standing relationship between Coulson and Daisy Quake, and it's had very much a father-daughter dynamic, and she's going rogue. Is there a moment where if she's
just dressed up like she just went to see a Nine Inch Nails concert?
She looks very bad.
Goth girl on the run. God knows she's probably got tattoos. As her father figure, I just so want to take her phone and send her to her room.
Just ban her from social media and all of that good stuff. But does she feel like, is there a moment where Coulson, they might push him too far, and you could see him conceivably saying, like, you know what, S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm no longer with you because you're just going after this daughter figure a little bit too much.
I think the love he has for her, she's the family he's got. To a certain extent, he and May have a kind of relationship that's like family. And it's one of the things I love about the show that they've explored beautifully is when you dedicate your life to protecting people and being on call 24/7, you give up a different version of family. Certainly people in military families know this, and police families. And there's a different kind of family you have to have. And that connection between he and Daisy is so deep that he believes in her even when everyone else has, decided that she's gone rogue or bad. And at the same time, I think he understands that the reason she's out there is because she's so filled with shame from the stuff that she did. She feels responsible for Lincoln's death. I mean, her Tinder must be, that's a tough swipe, because if you go on a date with her, your days are numbered to a certain extent. I guess that's what we have in common. You shouldn't go out with either of us. I think he's desperate to bring her in because I think he knows that she's out there because she's suffering.
But is there room for nuance within sort of this new S.H.I.E.L.D. organization? Because as we saw in that clip, it didn't sit well with Coulson and Mac that they're going to shoot to kill. That seems very, you're bringing in a dead body. Is there nuance for this new S.H.I.E.L.D.? Do they see sort of the possibility of working with an inhuman like her or rehabilitating her?
That's a great question. I think that's a theme that's been played out from time to time in the show and is never more kind of dramatic than right now, which is, are you committed to the name S.H.I.E.L.D. or are you committed to the idea? And what happens when the two are different? And certainly to have S.H.I.E.L.D. run by any leadership, whether it's the World Council, which it was for the first couple of movies, who turned out to be riddled with Hydra, or whoever's running it now, who could also be evil. You have to make your personal calls, and so, who knows, so maybe sometime that's going to drive them out of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. Almost certainly. And I think it's worth just noting, we had the Emmy Awards last night, and in addition to, one of your former castmates getting quite the big award, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, we also saw great wins for Tatiana Maslany, Game of Thrones. Yeah, certainly give it up for them. They're great actors, great shows. And did you ever think that this genre would be treated as art, that it would be treated and taken seriously within the industry? Because certainly it was sidelined for so long, like, oh, you're going to do a comic book movie, you're going to do a comic book show, oh, that's cute, come back to us when you want to do real art. And is there a sense that has changed?
I don't know. It's interesting. I was personally thrilled to see Tatiana Maslany and Rami Malek from Mr. Robot and all the Game of Thrones people. I thought that's some of the best TV that's going on right now. And I also loved Stranger Things. There's just a fascination with genre right now. Frankly, I wish it extended a little bit more. I feel like cast members from Jessica Jones and Daredevil, and certainly Mike Coulter. Everything I've seen coming up about Luke Cage looks incredible. I hope those people, their great work, and the writers and directors and the showrunners on those shows, I hope they get taken seriously. Because I think some of that work is really worthy of it.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think we're about to throw it out to audience questions, so I hope you guys have some great questions ready to go. We'll keep it somewhat spoiler-free, though, please, and try to avoid any kind of tease. I know, sorry. He's not going to just be like, so this is what happens in season 4, and just lay it all out for you.
Depends what kind of cash you're bringing. I could do,
Well, before we get to that, you certainly got to play with sort of some fun gadgets in your hand, your prosthetic cybernetic hand last season. So, without spoiling anything, are you looking forward to kind of having some fun gadgets, or is it just a hand this time?
No. The one thing I can trust from young Leo Fitz is that I will constantly, like an iPhone, be getting hand 7. And 7 Plus.
Yeah.
And that there will be some new features. There will be some new features with the hand.
You've gone through more and gotten better hands than even Luke Skywalker. So that's kind of an accomplishment right there, I would say.
Yeah.
So let's throw it out to the audience.
Well, you kind of spoiled my question because I was going to ask.
You were going to ask about the hand?
No, I was going to say, what's next for Agent Coulson?
Oh.
Okay, so what can I tell you without getting killed off? We know that with the absence of Daisy, as I said, you will see he and the spectacular Agent Alfonso Mackenzie, played by the equally magnificent Henry Simmons. We're partners. We're going to be hitting the road. What's coming up? He has to deal with a new boss, which I actually kind of like that dynamic. There's something a little bit more fun, like being the guy going, Rossin. How dare they send, this is the stupidest mission, than to be the guy giving the missions. I hope at some point we'll get Daisy back in the fold. And, like I said, Ghost Rider has a pretty bitchin' magical car. Phil Coulson used to have a pretty bitchin' magical car. It'd be interesting. I really hope at some point we get old Lola out of mothballs and see those two go up against each other, say, what's up? Right? Okay, yeah. That's all I can say without a missile coming through that window.
With your interactions with the new director, have you had a scene yet where he's like, Coulson, you're a loose cannon, I'll have your badge?
Over and over again.
Yes.
That's definitely, there's some of that. I mean, what they've done in hiring this remarkable actor, Jason O'Mara, and the character that they've created for the director is really interesting. It sets up some of those things you think it's going to be, and it's just a lot more interesting and a lot more complicated dynamic between them.
Cool. Next question.
Hi, my name is Markel. How you doing, Coulson?
How you doing?
Two really quick questions.
Agent Markel.
One is, if we're ever going to see the cast of S.H.I.E.L.D. Blend in with the world from Netflix. And the second is you being Coulson and being friends with both Tony and Steve. For Civil War, which side did you stand on?
Wow, wow, Agent Markel.
It's going to be that kind of interview, apparently.
Can you close a curtain or something so I'm not such an easy target? A lot of people ask this question about the crossover. I do believe that the Marvel world is still all connected, despite some stuff you can read to the contrary. I think what they've done quite wisely is build each world individually, let them kind of find out who they are, the evolution that our show has gone through, starting out kind of first through the door, Marvel TV live action, and kind of becoming more and more serialized, dark, moving to 10 o'clock. We're on at 10 o'clock. Did I mention we're on at 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, which means I'll be naked. No. That's the surest, quick route to cancellation.
There's just
not good for anybody.
So many ways to go with that one.
Okay, so Daredevil, I love it. Hell's Kitchen, setting it up, brilliant part of that world. Then Jessica Jones. Now we got Luke Cage coming up, which seems like a different part of a New York world. This is setting up the Defenders. We got my favorite comic as a kid, Daniel Rand, Iron Fist, coming. So the whole Netflix thing is reaching its first level of the Defenders. Our show is reaching a certain kind of level of its own. And then there are actually a couple of new shows on other networks, I believe, from Marvel coming up. So there'll be another third wing of that. Then you've got the cinematic, which is doing, on the one hand, bringing Cap and the Avengers together for Civil War, and now we got Guardians 2. So at a certain point, they've got two wings to blend over. And I think they realized early on, you don't want to just be like, oh, look, there's Agent May and Daisy walking through the Hell's Kitchen. Oh, they just left. Mm-hmm. It's when there's a really cool story to tell to cross them over, when that moment's right, I believe they'll take advantage of it. And that said, it's been really cool the times I've gotten to have Sam Jackson or Lady Sif come play in my sandbox. The other question was, that was a tough one. I really understand why some people would want to register some people with powers. Like, I get that. There was a lot of fatalities. Things were out of control. It felt like there needed to be some oversight. But Coulson's journey on our show has been going from the ultimate company man to somebody who really has to question who's pulling the buttons, who's pulling the strings. You say that they're going to be registered. That means somebody's watching over them. Who's watching over them? So I felt like I leaned toward Team Cap just because it is, after all, Cap. But I think that you'll see our version of that on the show. There is registration. They want to register people, including Daisy. So it puts him in a funny spot.
Yeah, and I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, how's it going? So I,
Hi.
like many fans, was very excited that Ghost Rider came back from the other studio and was back home at Marvel. So where would you like to see, Johnny Blaze on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or would you could see it on a Netflix show?
I'm so glad I don't have to make these decisions. I feel like they made 2 movies with Johnny Blaze, and there were things I really liked about him, but I'm glad they didn't just try to reboot that on our show. I really love that run of the comics with Robbie Reyes. It feels kind of more current. What our show is trying to do, I think, is really create a team, whether it's the bad guys or the team working against the bad guys, that really reflects the world right now. It's probably always been the world, but more accurately reflects the world, so that there's very powerful, very smart women and people of all races. And it'd be nice to have, sure, it would be cool to have Johnny Blaze, another white guy. But I also really like that we're going a different direction right now, and I think this Robbie Reyes character really deserves a chance. And I hope the fans will give him that chance. And also, from my understanding, and it wasn't one of my key comics when I was a kid, but my memory of Ghost Rider was that he's the spirit of vengeance, and that the spirit of vengeance could travel from one figure to the next, one person to the next. So I suspect what we're seeing now, it's a spirit that can move from one person to another. Who knows? You might see Agent Flaming Skull by the end of the year. We don't know.
That'll be a spinoff. Look forward to that.
And then I'll be on Netflix.
But until that spinoff, where can you find this guy? You can find him tomorrow night on ABC.
Thank you so much.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Thanks for coming down.
10 p.m. Check it out, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Please give it up for Mr. Clark. Gregg!